What if the moment you finally stop caring is the exact moment they start coming back, not out of love, but because they've lost control over you? Welcome to Distant Soul, where we uncover the hidden psychology of human connection. Today, we're exploring what really happens when you stop caring and how it shifts the power in avoidant relationships. People often think silence is simply the absence of sound, but the most dangerous kind is what lingers after you stop caring. When your emotions finally settle, when the pull that once kept you tied to an avoidant person begins to fade, something shifts at a deeper level. The entire balance of the connection starts to change. For a long time, they were comfortable knowing your attention revolved around them. Even when you were hurting, your presence reinforced a quiet sense of control for them. It wasn't necessarily intentional harm. It was that your emotional investment became a kind of safety net, protecting them from facing their own fears. But the moment you start pulling that energy back, when you stop reacting, stop chasing, stop feeding the pattern, that internal structure they relied on begins to crack. This collapse isn't really about losing you. It's about losing the system that made their world feel stable. Avoidant individuals often crave distance, yet they build their sense of security on the idea that someone is still there, waiting at that distance. Once that waiting disappears, something inside them destabilizes. They don't just feel absence, they feel a loss of control. Control, for them, is a quiet language. It's how they feel safe without having to fully open up. So when you detach, it's as if you've rewritten the rules they were living by. What once felt predictable suddenly no longer makes sense. They believed your care would always be there, that your patience would never run out, that your hope was endless. When that changes, it's like the reflection they saw of themselves through you suddenly vanishes, and without that reflection, they begin to question who they are. This is where their final pattern often begins. Instead of returning with genuine connection, they attempt to rebalance things through reversal. The one who once pulled away may start showing signs of interest. The person who felt unreachable might suddenly reappear, sometimes with messages that feel like closure, but actually reopen emotional wounds. This isn't driven by love, it's driven by the need to restore what felt familiar. They need to know they still matter to you. They may act distant while subtly drawing your attention back in. They might bring up shared memories or hint at regret without offering real accountability or growth. It creates a confusing contradiction. When you cared deeply, they withdrew, but when you let go, they move closer. Not to truly connect, but to make sure they're not forgotten. Their need for validation operates beneath their awareness. It's not always a conscious attempt to manipulate, it's a reaction rooted in fear. The fear of losing the emotional safety your care once gave them. They don't yet understand that real safety comes from vulnerability, not control, so they cling to what they know, distance as power, imbalance as protection. This phase can feel incredibly confusing for you. You might wonder if they've changed, if they're finally capable of giving what you once hoped for, but what's really happening is a reflex, a pull back toward familiarity. Your connection was built on a cycle of pursuit and withdrawal, and once you step out of that cycle, they feel unsteady. The silence they once used as protection now feels like abandonment to them. So they reach out again, not necessarily out of love, but to regain a sense of control over something that no longer feels predictable. When you choose peace instead of chaos, their sense of control weakens. Their response is to test whether they still exist in your emotional world. When they sense your energy has shifted, that the emotional charge between you is gone, something stirs inside them. For so long, they appeared comfortable in their distance, almost confident in their independence. But when you truly stop reaching for them, they begin to feel something unfamiliar. It may look like longing, but it's often fear beneath the surface. This is when their behavior can soften. They might show vulnerability in ways you've never seen before. They may say things that sound sincere, express regret, or bring up meaningful memories. It can feel like they've finally recognized your value, like something in them has changed. But that softness often comes from panic, not transformation. When you withdraw your care, You remove the mirror that reflected their sense of self. Many avoidant individuals carry an inner emptiness they struggle to define. Your love, even when they resisted it, confirmed that they mattered. Your attention validated their existence in someone else's world. So when that disappears, something unsettles them deeply. Their vulnerability in this moment is real, but it's also temporary. It's a reaction to the discomfort of feeling unseen. They return not necessarily to repair the connection, but to fill that sudden void. You might notice how their words feel deeper, how they suddenly express emotions they once avoided. And that's what makes it so powerful and so confusing. Because just as quickly as it appears, it can fade. Once they feel reassured again, once they sense your heart opening back up, the fear that triggered their vulnerability begins to quiet. And with that, their old defenses return. It's not cruelty, it's a pattern built on survival. Their openness isn't a lasting shift, it's a response to the fear of losing emotional relevance. This is why the timing feels so painful. You waited for honesty, for effort, for emotional presence, and when you finally release the attachment, they show up differently. It makes you question everything, whether they've changed or whether your detachment somehow unlocked something in them. But underneath it all is a conflict they haven't resolved. When they feel your absence, their fear of abandonment pushes them closer. But once closeness returns, their fear of intimacy takes over again, and they retreat. Their brief vulnerability becomes a way to restore emotional balance on their terms. It reassures them that they still matter, that they still have influence in your world. It's not about intentionally deceiving you, it's about soothing their own internal discomfort. The truth is, their return is often about preservation, not reconciliation. They want to feel that the connection still exists, that they haven't been erased from your emotional life. And so their vulnerability becomes the final subtle form of control, gentle, emotional, and disarming. It draws you back in if you're not careful. It makes you question your boundaries, your decisions, even your healing. But it's not love guiding them back. It's the fear of facing themselves without the reflection your care once provided. And when they realize they're no longer at the center of your emotional world, that loss of control can feel deeply unsettling. Your silence, your distance, your refusal to re-enter the old pattern, it all challenges the fragile structure they depended on. They were used to knowing that no matter how far they pulled away, you would still be there. When that certainty disappears, they feel something they rarely face, a loss of emotional dominance. And this is where another subtle tactic can emerge. They may begin planting seeds of doubt, guilt, and nostalgia, not necessarily in an obvious way, but through carefully chosen words that make you question yourself. They might say things that sound simple, even innocent, yet carry emotional weight. Statements that make you wonder if you were too distant, too impatient, too quick to let go. They shift the focus away from their avoidance and place it onto your response. This isn't about healing the connection. It's about keeping you emotionally tied to them, even if it's through confusion or guilt. Rather than confronting their own fears directly, they reshape the narrative so you begin to carry the emotional burden. Your detachment feels like rejection to them, but instead of expressing that vulnerability openly, they redirect it. Often this isn't fully conscious. It's a learned defense, a way to maintain control without risking emotional exposure. By making you question your boundaries, they create an opening to pull you back into the dynamic. Guilt becomes the invisible thread. Even when the relationship itself has ended, that thread can keep you emotionally connected, replaying moments, questioning decisions, and feeling responsible for something that was never yours to carry in the first place. They lean on your empathy, the very trait that once intimidated them, to stay present in your thoughts. The irony is sharp. The same sensitivity that drew you closer becomes the thread they use to keep you from fully letting go. You may notice a pattern in their timing. They don't usually reach out when you're struggling. They appear when you've started to find calm. Just as clarity settles in, just as you begin accepting the end, a message arrives. It's rarely direct. Instead, it slips in quietly, maybe as a shared memory, Do you remember that night when everything felt right? Or a statement that taps into your compassion? I know I hurt you. I was just scared. These words aren't random. They're meant to reopen doors you worked hard to close. What they're really seeking is proof. They want to feel that they can still move something inside you, that they still carry weight in your emotional world. What unsettles them most isn't the loss of love, it's the loss of influence. This creates a deep inner conflict for you. Their sudden emotional awareness can feel sincere, and in some ways it is. But the purpose behind it isn't to rebuild something real, it's to restore a sense of control. They struggle with the idea of being forgotten or replaced, yet they also can't tolerate the vulnerability that true closeness requires. So they move back and forth, distance, then re-engagement, using nostalgia and guilt to keep you orbiting around them. It becomes a subtle form of manipulation wrapped in emotion and familiarity. You start questioning yourself, your healing, your boundaries, even your decision to walk away. And that's exactly the effect. Not reunion, but reassurance that they still matter. By awakening guilt in you, they quiet it within themselves. If they can make you doubt your choices, they don't have to fully face their own. It allows them to believe the distance wasn't entirely their doing, that both of you share the weight of what happened. That shared blame becomes their comfort. It lets them keep emotional distance without confronting the hurt they caused. This is a defense mechanism, not always conscious, but deeply ingrained. The emotional fog they create protects them while also giving them a sense of relief. Their final tactic is subtle because it uses the very qualities that once defined your love, your compassion, your patience, your ability to understand instead of judge. By stirring guilt and uncertainty, they draw you back into the same maze, not to rebuild, but to prevent you from fully leaving it behind. But when you truly detach, when your heart no longer moves to the rhythm of their inconsistency, something shifts. For a long time, they controlled the pace of the connection. They decided when closeness happened and when distance took over. That push and pull dynamic was their comfort zone. It allowed connection without full exposure. The moment you step out of that pattern, the dynamic flips. Their sense of control was never about outward dominance. It was emotional. It lived in knowing they could withdraw and still be wanted, that they could give less and still receive more. But once the pursuit ends, they're left facing something they've always avoided: vulnerability. Your calm unsettles them. Your indifference feels like exposure. Their usual strategies, silence, withdrawal, emotional distance, no longer affect you the way they once did. And that realization shakes the very system they built to protect themselves. They've always feared losing control over their emotional world. Distance allowed them to manage connection without feeling consumed by it. But when you no longer respond to that distance, you reveal the illusion behind it. Their silence no longer holds power. Their absence no longer commands your attention. This is where their final pattern reappears, quiet but intentional. They may send mixed signals: brief warmth followed by withdrawal, connection followed by silence. These contradictions aren't accidental. They're designed to unsettle your new stability. They need to know if they can still affect you, if uncertainty can still be created. Because as long as you feel unsure, they don't feel powerless. This phase isn't about love. It's about restoring the imbalance that once made them feel safe. To them, emotional stability feels unfamiliar, even threatening. Chaos, distance, and tension are what they understand. So they try to recreate that environment. Sometimes they mirror your detachment, acting as though they don't care. Other times, they shift blame, suggesting that you've changed or become cold. It's a way to redirect discomfort. If they can make you question your peace, they can pull you back into emotional confusion. But the truth runs deeper. They were never truly seeking control over you. They were protecting themselves from their own vulnerability. Their behavior was a shield against the fear of needing someone who could leave. When you detach, that shield falls, not through force but through absence. and suddenly they're left exposed, unsure how to navigate without the old pattern. So they return to what they know, unpredictability, drawing you in with warmth, then pulling away once they feel safe again. It's a cycle meant to test whether your peace can be disrupted. But the shift isn't only happening between you, it's happening within them too. Your detachment forces them to face something they've long avoided, themselves without your reflection. The identity they built, centered on control, emotional distance, and being desired without fully opening, begins to weaken. And instead of confronting that collapse, they try to recreate the old dynamic. That's the essence of their final move, to pull you back into imbalance, disguising it as reconnection, not seeking love, but the comfort of control. When you stop chasing them, when your silence replaces longing and your peace replaces pleading, something profound unfolds. For the first time, they no longer have a mirror to project themselves onto. Your presence once allowed them to avoid facing their inner emptiness. Through your care, they found validation, reassurance, and escape. But when you step away, that mirror disappears. The silence they once hid behind begins to echo, and in that echo, they're left with themselves. What once felt like safe distance turns into something else, emptiness. And in that space, they begin to realize that the intimacy they avoided is the very thing they've been searching for, even while fearing it. They built their identity around control, believing emotional independence meant safety. Closeness, to them, felt risky. When you entered their life, you became both comfort and threat. They were drawn to your warmth, yet unsettled by your depth. Your consistency highlighted their instability. Your love showed them parts of themselves they had buried, the part that wanted to trust, to feel, to belong. But that same reflection frightened them. It exposed wounds they hadn't healed, so they pushed you away, not out of malice, but out of fear. And yet, when you stop caring, that reflection disappears entirely. There's no longer anything distracting them from their own silence. At first, they may try to fill the void with distractions, routines, new connections, but nothing replaces what you represented. Because it was never just about you, it was about how your presence helped them avoid themselves. Without that, they're left confronting a truth they've long denied, that avoiding love is, at its core, avoiding themselves. This realization is deeply unsettling. Without your reflection, they feel invisible, restless, unanchored. Their usual defenses stop working, and this is when they may try to return, not out of love, but out of a need to escape that inner confrontation. They reach out, reappear, or seem changed. But what they're really seeking is the mirror you once provided. They want to feel seen again, to feel real again, to reconnect with the version of themselves that existed through your care. It's not intimacy they're chasing, it's relief from the void. This is the hidden tragedy of their behavior. They run from closeness because it threatens them, yet they return to it when distance becomes unbearable. They're caught in a cycle of seeking and escaping, never realizing that the peace they want exists within the very vulnerability they resist. When you stop caring, you interrupt that cycle, you stop being their mirror. And in doing so, you force them to look inward. Some will resist, trying to pull you back into their orbit. Others will retreat even further. But either way, your detachment becomes something powerful. It becomes the mirror they truly needed. Not one that reflects them through your love, but one that reveals who they are without it. And when you finally step back, when your heart no longer bends around their distance, you show them something they never expected. A form of love that doesn't chase, doesn't prove, and doesn't beg to be chosen. In your silence, they're left with clarity. They begin to see what their fear, their control, and their patterns have cost them. Their final moves, the guilt, the sudden softness, the pull back into confusion, aren't rooted in cruelty. They come from fear. Fear of facing themselves without the comfort of your reflection. Fear of realizing that the love they pushed away was the very thing that could have changed them. And in the end, your detachment becomes the lesson. Because when you choose peace over the cycle, you don't just walk away, you reveal the truth. The distance was never really between you and them, it was always within them. In the end, their actions were never truly about love. They were about maintaining control and avoiding their own vulnerability. When you step away and choose peace, you break the cycle that once defined the connection. Your silence forces them to face themselves while freeing you from the emotional loop. The truth is, the distance was never between you and them, it was always within them. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to stay connected with Distant Soul. And if you truly understand this journey, comment, "I choose peace" below.